Okay, the meeting of the Prairielands Groundwater Conservation District for August 16th, 2021 is called to order. Can we call roll, please?
Director Beseda, Director Kirk,
Here.
Director Osborne, Director Tischler, Director McPherson, Director Smith, Director Curtis,
Here.
and Director McClure.
Here.
We have a quorum present.
Okay. Yeah, the public meeting is called to order. Item 3, receive permit hearing report from general manager. Receive any public comment or request to contest or consider granting, denying, or amending applications for the following operating permit. We'll let Kathy take over from that.
The first one we have on the agenda today, I believe, is Troy Bradshaw, and I don't believe we have anyone here today. Do we online? Right. I think so. This is a permit application to for a proposed well, and based on it is for a new construction of a new non-exempt well to be used for public water to supply a 201-acre modular home RV park location located in southern Johnson County. Based on staff and our consultants' technical review, it would be my recommendation to approve this restoration and allow construction to commence on the new well contingent upon the applicant maintaining a 50-foot spacing for property lines, as well as relocating the proposed well site so that the placement of the new well is located within the suggested area of drilling that was identified by our consultant with our well spacing tool. That is included in your board packet on page 7. Where you'll see the kind of the green dashed slanted lines on the map. So it's the parallel green, lime green lines right there. That is the suggested area. So, that's one of the conditions, as well as updating the original well application with the new location so that we have accurate data on that. So it would make my recommendation to approve that with those conditions, as well as the permitted authorization not to exceed 2,050,000 gallons per year.
Is there any discussion on this item? Do I hear a motion? So moved. We have a motion and a second to allow operating permit for a new well 2439. All in favor? I'll send that motion.
Yes, the next one is Glen Lake Camp and Retreat Center. This is an existing well that was drilled prior to the district rules requiring wells of that size to be permitted. It was actually drilled in, I believe, 2018. 1985, I apologize for that. Anyway, it's located on 88 acres, contiguous acres in Somerville County. Applicant is a summer camp, and they plan to use this water for pond replenishment as well as some type of water activity. based on our review and staff's recommendation, it would be mine to recommend to the board to approve this operating permit for an amount not to exceed a 2021 of 1.5 million gallons, because they're not in full operation under that. And then annually thereafter for the 3.5 million gallons. Are they using the wells? So I think we might need to extrapolate backwards that original amount for 2021 to include the 3.5 million, but they're actually using it right now. It's just not using it. And we'll need to come up with a calculation based on the ongoing months once this meter will be go back to the video in operation. So I'm in that recommendation to include amount to be 3.5 billion gallons annually. They are also to provide updated meter information on once it's installed. So in that process, as well as any fines or fees associated with violation of operating without. I think that showed them no later than August.
Is there any more discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion on the general manager's recommendation. Second. At this, there you go. At this time, if there's no other discussion, we'll adjourn the public hearing. Do I hear a motion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Does anybody need a break before we go into the regular session? Okay, then we will open the regular board meeting of the Prairielands Groundwater Conservation District for August 16th, 2021. There is a quorum present. Would you please call roll?
Director Beseda, Director Kirk, Director Osborne, Director Tischler, Director McPherson, Director Smith, Director Curtis,
Here.
Director McClure.
Here.
We have a quorum present.
Okay, at this time, we would invite public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak? If not, we'll go to item 4, consent agenda. All items are considered routine and self-explanatory and may be considered and approved by one motion of the board. There will be no separate discussion of the items unless a board member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence. Is there anyone like to take any items off? We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, item number 5, presentation of unaudited financial for the month of July 2021. Brian Watts, Comptroller.
Good morning. Good morning. In your packet, you will have 2 items. One is a profit and loss budget performance report, and the second item is a balance sheet. You will see in the first column on the profit and loss budget performance report the activities for July. You will see that we had total income of $103,744.11. That was bolstered by a production fee settlement that we received of $70,387.70, in addition to our normal operating income. So that pushed us way over. You can see that was a unbudgeted revenue item. So that is certainly a nice surprise item to have in our financials. On the balance sheet, you can see that our ending cash including the $200 petty cash that we keep in the office at 1,786,216.54, with accounts receivable of 10,104.46, which is a good low number. We've been really working on collecting any of those outstanding invoices. Now I'd entertain any questions I don't want to read through line item for you.
Are there any questions for Brian? If not, I guess we need a motion to approve financial. Have a motion. I have a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes.
And then also, as we presented last time, for the two directors that were not here, we have presented and prepared this cash flow and cash forecast to kind of get us through to the end of the year. And as promised from last meeting, as we move forward through the year, we will start, tweaking these numbers to be more representative of what we actually have based upon real life data. As you can see, the July column has now been unshaded because we've moved from estimated to actual. Of course, we had cash collections come in at $296,912. So that was very, very good. And our cash outflow was $152,535.80, which means that we had a net cash inflow of $144,376.64 for the month. You can see how that impacts everything for us. I'm still projecting an end of the year based upon this of a $1.8 million that we're going to still be sitting there. Again, we still have several months that I'm estimating what our cash outflow is going to be. As we get closer to that, we'll be able to tweak with some real live data and know exactly where we're going to be. And then again, for the benefit of the two directors that were not here last month, at the bottom, we're kind of making some projections upon the Rule 7.4 rebate amount that customers can claim, so that we're kind of anticipating what our cash needs may be in the first quarter after we finalized everything. Again, this is a wild guess. Okay, so nothing set in stone in this, but we just basically took our annual billings, assuming a 15% across the board would qualify for it. We're going to need about $272,000 of that 1.8 end of the year cash amount to satisfy that. Whether those be refunds, whether those be credits against future billings, whichever, it's going to have an impact on cash, obviously. So I met with Annette, and we decided that after we get the third quarter wrapped up into September 30, she's going to try to start working on some better numbers for who may be qualified for that rebate. So maybe we can start tweaking some of that after September 3rd and start working on that too. So we can maybe iron down that. Well, 15%, absolutely. Absolutely. We just really don't know. I mean, because there's certain requirements that they have to meet. Some people have already excluded themselves because of the actions they've had as far as billing and payment timely and things of that nature. So, it is. Absolutely. It is a broad brush I'm painting with. So again, this is just an information item. It's a forecast, so it would be appropriate for you to vote on it or anything. It's just presented for you guys to kind of keep you apprised for cash information.
Marty, to be clear though, 20% is worst case. Okay. Yeah, which is, I think, a very good estimate.
And again, I make myself available to you if you have any questions in between meetings.
Thank you, Brian. We appreciate you. Is there any discussion on item 5? If not, we'll move on to item 6, update on public outreach activities, educational and conservation efforts. Sinclair Newby. Sinclair, you're up.
Good morning. Just a few updates. So the water education trailer, it was hosted by David Walker Elementary on July 28th. So this school, actually with Crowley ISD, half of Crowley ISD is in Johnson County and half of it's in Tarrant. And this school itself was just a few miles into Tarrant County. So we actually partnered with Northern Trinity. Their general manager, Bob Patterson, came down and I gave presentations in the water education trailer, and Bob was there to kind of answer any questions about and share a little bit of information about Tarrant County as well. So it was nice to work collaboratively with that neighboring GCD, especially when students were coming from Johnson County or Tarrant County. A e-blast about the water use fee rate for 2022 that was adopted at last month's board meeting. That was distributed to our well owners on July 19th, just making another avenue available for them to be aware of that announcement. Kathy and I met with young man, Jackson Miller. He is our 4-H water ambassador from Somerville County. So this is the first time we've ever had a water ambassador from Somerville County. So we're really excited to meet with him. He came here to the office and we got to visit with him and show him the education trailer and get to know a little bit more about him. And I look forward to working with him over the next year. Kathy and I also presented to members of the Johnson County Association of Realtors at a membership luncheon that they held last Thursday, specifically talking about that seller's disclosure item about disclosing if the property is within a GCD and what that means for sellers and buyers and also realtors, talking about spacing and minimum tract size, and answering a lot of really good questions that these realtors have, especially in terms of the transfer of well ownership too. I've also begun the planning and promotion of another rainwater harvesting 101 workshop. It is scheduled for Saturday, September 18th here at the Prairielands office. We had a ton of interest and a full house at our last one, and we've already got several that have signed up for this one. So looking forward to having that educational workshop next month. With that, that's kind of all I have to update right now, but I'd love to answer any questions. Yes, sir. Not that I noticed. Because there were realtors, there were some representatives of title companies. And so they had a couple different questions about,
Can I jump in
Yes,
and answer
yes.
that? So, yes, there was a lot of good questions. One of it would be, how do we know about these things that are changing? And, is this only in these 4 counties, so forth like that? There's questions on transfer of ownership. There's a fee involved. Who pays that? Of course, one of my comments to them is, they only represent half of the party involved. Either it's the buyer or the seller. And at this point, if we can get the buyer's name on the line, we're willing to waive part of that fee just to get that information, because our database can't be updated unless there's some cooperation. The one thing, they had some little war stories as well as instances of property being sold and not being able to develop as planned originally. And, where do they need to send some of their clients to do more due diligence, because it's not something that's usually discovered in title. Besides, we know there's easements, but are there any variances or ordinances involved? And where do they take even a water sample to have it tested, because that's no longer required as part of closing on some of these rural areas. And they're finding out there's places that the water quality is not as good as we'd hope. We heard about questions about these, what we call cluster systems. They're seeing people wanting to do more and more of that. How does that affect them? Which it really doesn't, but it's good questions. But, what comes into play is the long-term consequences of some of the actions that are, either we buy this piece of property, what's already existing, you know, if you want to redevelop it, so forth, and making sure that these people are aware of, you know, there is a groundwater district. We're here to be a resource. If they don't have the answers, give them our card. We will help them answer that. But, you know, especially if they're selling property to someone that wants to develop it more than just, you know, for a house, they need to be aware of if you plan to put a well or if you're within a public water system, those type of things, and who to contact. So,
Great. I think that by going out and doing it and challenging these really important not questions, but generating questions amongst them, which in the long run may help us better do our job. So that's
and I think we need to continue doing it with some of the other groups and counties. I did realize that some of the realtors in that audience that day do work in multiple counties, but I'm sure there's other areas, even outside of the district a little bit, just to the point of the overlapping territories. It was a tough group to have to present to the point they had several on the agenda. Right in front of us was someone giving an update on a new legislative change that just came into effect, where if you're within a PID, what did they call it, publicly improvement district, then you're required, and it falls back on the realtor on this, that there must be some documentation acknowledged prior to that given to the buyer, and that if it doesn't, should the buyer come aware of it afterwards, it can avoid the contract and all escrow is lost. I mean, it's very buyer protective on it, but it's putting all the responsibility on these realtors. So they were really a little, you know, grieving that here we have something else we're now required to do, because if we don't ensure, you know, because ultimately we lose the sale or the purchase on this. And so, you know, I had to get up and say, you know, well, here I am asking you to do one more thing. The only thing is there's not really a enforcement mechanism on what we're asking of y'all. It's more or less to help, you know, educate your buyer, your seller, so that you minimize the calls that you're getting following up about, you sold me this, I was not aware of it, so forth. Of course, if we had a commissioner in the audience and he was like, yeah, because then the next phone call he gets. And so he would appreciate, you know, everybody doing their best to make sure we educate our public. But I totally agree with you, Mr. Curtis, on that.
Are there any further questions for Sinclair or Kathy on this item? If not, we'll move to item 7. Discuss, consider, and take action to approve resolution number 21-006, adopting amendments to the district bylaws, updating 2.4 officers. Turn this over to Kathy.
Page 87 in your packet. I think it's printed one. But anyway, what this is, we have talked through the year about amending our bylaws to reflect an updated slate of officers. Historically, we've had 4 officers, which consisted of a president, first vice president, second vice president, then a secretary treasurer. Following, you know, the conversations I've heard, I have redlined the bylaws to modify that to a 3-officer position, which would only be a president, vice president, and a secretary treasurer. I did visit with other groundwater districts to see how many officers each had. And, you know, a lot of it depends on if you have a 5-member board, a 9-member board. You know, you don't want to weight your board so heavy that it's predominantly officers, and that therefore you have a quorum and can't meet with just an executive committee. We're kind of in the middle of number of officers, but still, I saw very few have more than 3 officers. And if they did, it was a split of the secretary treasurer position, but majority of them combined that position. So it was my recommendation to kind of follow that and make it a 3-officer position. We're at this time where that officer of first vice president is vacant, so it's very appropriate to amend at this time. We will have election of officers again is at our September meeting, once we have our swearing in of reappointments of everyone. So the timing to do this is probably best at this meeting so that we can go forward with 3 officers selected.
Are there any questions?
And that's to the bylaws.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. And that was all on that item, wasn't it, Kathy?
That is correct.
Okay, item number 8, groundwater management area number 8, update on activities related to joint planning and the development of desired future conditions. And we'll turn that back over to Kathy.
I have no update since our last meeting. As you recall, the GMA was supposed to have met in July. That has been postponed pending receipt of our report, which to my knowledge has not been received to the planning group. So once I have more information on when they plan to reschedule it or either that explanatory report in draft form, I will update the board of that.
Is
That
that
would be-
everything you have on that, Kathy?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. There's no action to be taken there. We'll move on to item number 9, the engineering report. Is Wade Oliver available?
I am on if you guys can hear me. Is that a yes?
Yes, Wade. We're bringing
All
you.
right. I have a very brief report for you all. Just wanted to update you on our activities. So we met with the Rules Committee
Hey,
on
Wade,
August.
Wade,
Yes,
can you hear,
yes.
can you turn your camera on?
Yes, I sure can. There we go.
Thank you.
Yep. So good to see all of you. We met with the Rules Committee on August 5th to discuss not really rules changes, but just some of the well spacing rules and the ways that those are being implemented. And coming out of that meeting, we are developing some well spacing relationship tables. So tied to the existing rules, but to hopefully provide some clarity about what the rules mean on a site-specific basis throughout the district. So we are very far down that road. We have some draft tables, and we're kind of going back and forth with the district staff to make sure that they're structured to be useful, so that someone can go to a property and say, you know, if I'm going to this aquifer and I want to pump this much, what's my property spacing, what's my well spacing going to be, without having to go through a big technical analysis or pull up mod flow models. So that's one thing. We've also started an aquifer storage and recovery / aquifer recharge study to help the district with one of the goals in your management plan, which is tied to those things. So what we're doing is downscaling a statewide study that was performed over the last year or so to really dig into what the potential is for ASR, which is aquifer storage and recovery, and AR in district, and report back on that potential. In addition to that, we're still have some ongoing activities, both with the monitoring plan and with development of water level trends in the district. And so I expect we'll be meeting very shortly with district staff for a more detailed update on what we are thinking about in those 2 areas. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions related to any of those items.
Are there any questions for Wade?
This isn't a question, it's a comment. Thank you, Wade, for your preparation and being so far along on the project.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any more questions or comments? Is that everything you had, Wade?
That is.
Okay. All right, we do appreciate you. We appreciate all the hard work you do.
All right. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, we'll go to item 10, General Manager's report and update.
Okay, thank you. Well, one of the first things I want to mention is we're approached the 1-year anniversary of the completion of the building, even though we did not officially move until like the first part of September, waiting on furniture and stuff. What comes with that, once you hit that 1-year anniversary is, you know, now the warranties fall off of everything and you start seeing the little problems happening, which is typical. But for the most part, the building's in good shape. Modern contractors and McGee architects were out here at the end of July to do a walkthrough. We have some areas that, you know, kind of like a second punch list that they're going to take care of that we acknowledged to them prior to the end of that 1-year period. Last week, we did experience some air conditioning issues. We were unable to cool the front part of the offices. We did get the AC folks out here. And I think what Michael said it came back to is that voltage was not getting to one of the outside units. They were able to disconnect that switch, which fixed everything. You know, it sounds like, well, you disconnected it. Why was it there to begin with? But the AC folks seem to think that's just an added preventative. You know, it hasn't ever seen any complications from it for being removed in other situations. We also noticed at the time that it tends to be some condensation building up in our crawl space area. So they readjusted those pans to make sure it's accurately placed to catch that. So hopefully things will be good for a while. Other than that, the building's in really good shape. Next thing going on in office, you know, it continues to be very busy with several things. Permitting has been working with HAF to work out the minor details on the new database. I did receive an email from HAF late last week. They're wanting to schedule a meeting again this week with staff to kind of roll out those new applications that were approved at our last board meeting for them to incorporate into the system, as well as they have a few other minor updates to the system. So hopefully we'll be live. You know, I keep saying next month, but I'm really serious. I don't know if the last 2 weeks of July, I focused on completing all staff's annual evaluations as required to personnel policy. I know Wade talked a little bit about the rules committee meeting. I'm sure Brian will add some more to that, but we did meet on the 5th, which the items included overview of the district's existing well spacing rules and its purpose by the board, selected the process that's in the rules. Other discussions included well monitoring as well as system water loss, accountability, and water availability requirements. Water availability requirements is kind of going hand in hand with some conversations we're having, especially with Johnson County, on making sure, you know, adequate planning is being done in advance, planning and things of that type. Committee is again scheduled to meet again on August 26th. These committees are kind of working jointly with the planning development to make sure that any of the plans or goals that the planning development committee are looking at don't conflict with rules, or at least will be able to be incorporated within the rules. One of the other things I wanted to mention, and I failed to mention this at July, but in June, the district did receive a notice of a UIC permit application for a Class 1 injection well in Peel County. These typically, you know, most people think of UIC that goes to the Railroad Commission. This one, because of what it is planning to inject, which is a municipal landfill leachate in Class 1 and 2 industrial wastewaters, which that can include a lot of many things. But because it's not a byproduct of the oil and gas field, it now falls under TCEQ. The district fortunately does receive notice of these applications, but a lot of times it's not real timely. Where Railroad Commission, we don't receive notices. We hire a consultant that goes down there and goes through all these applications. So when I did receive this, I did send a notice to our attorneys regarding, because what I've experienced this before in other areas, you still want to review these applications to ensure that the proposed well, injection well is being completed properly into areas that will not contaminate or cause degradation of the water quality in those areas and so forth. And there is a process on this, but it's pretty, it's time sensitive in many ways, but in many ways it's not. It's a long process, but once they do come back with recommendations on this application, whether PCQ approves it, then it starts these 30-day, 60-day clock. So right now, I've turned it over to the attorneys, which have a consultant that they use that more or less helps us with any disclosures to the public so we know more about this. Anyway, they're reviewing that application, and should it be deemed that there is some concerns with it, then we will have an opportunity to protest it. Ron may want to weigh in on that a little more. At this time, it may be harmless, but we always want to make sure our public's aware of it. When you receive in the carrier, it was like 2-3 inch notebooks, just the application itself. It's not something that's going to overnight. And again, we're still waiting to work with council on historic use permits, setting those for hearing. I think as the school gets back to going, everyone's time and availability will be better, and we could kind of sit down and develop a calendar on that to share with the board so we can knock those out. Again, working with them as actual authorized permits instead of temporarily authorized. I don't believe I have anything more to share. The general manager report has an update on our year-to-date water usage or pumpage information. I'm glad to take any questions should the board have any. Yes, John.
Will GCEQ notify us?
Yes. They are required to notify us. We were a little delayed in getting original notice because the address had not updated from when we moved. So we've ensured that has happened. Plus, we've also added our attorney to this particular one. So both of us should be getting those notes.
How's that fair?
Well, this is the first time we've had month to month. So if you look back on, we probably extrapolated back out, but previously they reported annually or monthly. And a lot of times when they did that semi-annually, they just put it in one number. They didn't break it out by monthly. So not sure we can actually do the apples to apple on that.
And it's not that.
Well, it's
what's the purpose of it?
it's trends I like to watch, but unfortunately, previously how it was all reported and entered into the system, it's really hard to get that quickly. But going forward, we will be able to have those month to month, especially to be able to track, the seasonal changes if we have wet years, dry years, so forth.
Out of memory. If we total 6.5, then we're going to total year on pace to.
Staff is watching real aggressively the puppet information as it comes in to see trends and spiking.
Eventually, we'd be on pace.
Right. Now, I'm kind of curious about, have you not had all that rain early on? What was that slowed things?
Very much so. Okay.
When we review the injection notes, that the attorney will take a look at that, but do we have ways of looking also.
Okay, I apologize if I didn't make that real clear. There is a consultant that the attorneys have hired that his name is, I have it in here. Grant is his last name. He is, we've used him in some contested case hearings in another county I've been with. He reviews this for all the hydrological and everything, so he's very qualified. So it's not Wade that's reviewing, but it's an outside source. And Brian, are you on right now?
I am.
Can you explain, Mr. Grant, a little more to the
Sure. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Phil Grant with Terra Dynamics. He's phenomenal with UIC applications. We have used him for monitoring all UIC applications for our groundwater districts for 10 or 15 years. He's that's his specialty. He's very economically efficient in his review of these applications, and we utilize him every time we get an application in for the district, inside the district, for any injection well at the Railroad Commission or at TCEQ, to do a review of that and provide feedback for us and the district staff on whether the application is protective of the groundwater resources in the area.
Okay, that was my concern. As long as we're looking into it so we don't cross-contaminate a bunch of stuff. Great. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, are there any further questions for Kathy or Brian or anyone else? Any discussion? If not, we'll move on to item 11, general counsel report. Brian?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And good morning. Well, between Wade and Kathy, they kind of said everything I was going to say. Not much more to add. We're working on some rules revisions for the rule committee. And as Kathy noted, we got another meeting coming up in a couple of weeks to continue to work on that. Summer's over, school's getting started, and we're gonna be getting the historic use permit application hearings scheduled. And not much happening in Austin, still no quorum and no groundwater related bills have been filed in these special sessions. And I really don't have anything else. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, are there any, is there any discussion or questions for Brian or anyone else? If not, we'll move on to item 12. Does anybody have any discussion of new business for future meetings?
Kathy, on that meeting that that got postponed, when will that be rescheduled for?
Well, probably the first part of September, sometime before our next board. We met with the rules committee. We identified the tables that you heard Wade mention about. He's finalizing those. Wants to kind of have that.
Okay.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
All right.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned.